I'm Shan from Thomas the Baker, and today we're showing you how to bake a simple focaccia. A focaccia is a traditional flat Italian bread and it can be finished with all sorts of different toppings. The recipe that we're going to take you through today makes two focaccia breads of around 450 grams each, one that you can use now and one that you can keep for later because these are excellent reheated in the oven later on. The first step for your focaccia, as with most bread doughs, is to activate your yeast. So today we're using dried yeast. This is currently available in our stores. We've just picked this up in our local store in little pots. So this needs to be activated. For this recipe you'll be using 340 grams of warm water. So this should be just above body temperature, sort of around 38 to 42 degrees Celsius. So it should feel warm when you put your finger into it. You'll take a heaped teaspoon of the yeast along with around half a teaspoon of sugar and mix it into that, and then leave it to activate for around 10-15 minutes, and you will end up with something that looks like that. We've got a little video on our blog that shows you every step of how to activate your yeast like this, so make sure to pop over and have a look at that. So now it's time to add all of your ingredients into the mixing bowl, ready to go onto the mixer or to knead by hand. The first thing to add is your flour. For this recipe we're using an Italian 00 flour. This is currently available in our stores in 1 kilo bags. It's a white finely milled Italian flour which is perfect for Italian breads, pizza, even pasta. So we're going to add 500 grams of this. Next you need 9 grams of salt, then 60 grams of extra virgin olive oil, you need plenty of olive oil for this recipe as you can top your bread with some olive oil at the end later on. Then we'll add our yeast, the activated yeast. And finally the rest of the water that you measured out earlier. So this was 340 mils with a cup taken out to use for the yeast. Then we simply pop this onto our mixer with a bread hook attached. And you want to mix this at a slow speed for around 10 to 12 minutes, or you can knead the dough by hand for the same amount of time. So after 12 minutes in the mixer with the bread hook, the dough has now come together and is ready to come out onto a lightly floured surface where I'll knead it for about 30 seconds and shape it into a bowl, and then I'm going to pop it back into the bowl. So this is quite a loose dough, the focaccia. If it's very wet, you can add a bit more flour to help it come together, as I've done here. Or if it's too dry, you can just add a splash more water. So this can go back into the bowl you used to mix it. The bowl just needs to be at least twice the size of the dough you're using. And just pop some olive oil into the bottom of there to make sure that it doesn't stick. And swish it around the sides. Then you just pop your dough into the bowl, and we'll cover that and leave it in a warm place for around 45 minutes. It may even be up to an hour and a half depending on how warm the area is that you're leaving it in, and it wants to double in size during this time. Then next we're going to knock it back. So I'm going to leave that to rise for a little bit. Now the dough has had around an hour to prove and it's about doubled in size, so let's take a look. So it's now time to knock the dough back. So we're going to empty this out onto a lightly floured surface. And we're going to shape the dough now. So just give it sort of 30 seconds to work it back together as we knock it back. Now, as this dough makes enough for 2 focaccias, we're going to split this in half now. And while we prepare our tins, we'll just leave this here to relax for a few minutes. So you'll want a tin around this sort of size. We'll put this into the recipe below. And you want to use a generous amount of extra virgin olive oil and make sure that the sides and the bottom of the tin are all nicely coated. And then finally a bit more olive oil, it's a very olive oil heavy recipe this one, onto your dough. And now we're going to shape this to approximately the size of the tin. Now once you've got your dough shaped into your tin, you want to cover it over with a damp tea towel again or a piece of cling film and pop that back into your warm place for about another 45 minutes to an hour and a half, again depending on the room temperature, until it's risen back up again. And we'll do the same with this ball of dough as well now. Now an hour later you can see that the dough has doubled in size here. You can tell that it's fully proofed because if you press your finger into it, it'll make an indent and it won't spring back. So what we're going to do now is the fun bit. We can finally add the toppings. So first you need to get a little bowl with some olive oil in it, extra virgin olive oil again. Dip your finger in and we're going to make some indents around an inch space between each one, just like so. And now we're ready to add our toppings. So you can choose a vast multitude of things for this. Today we're going to use some rosemary, fresh rosemary, and some parmesan, but you could add anything. You could have sun-dried tomatoes, cherry tomatoes, garlic, all sorts of different herbs, artichokes, mushrooms, anything you've got in your fridge. Even roasted vegetables will go wonderfully on top of this. Just make sure to top it with a drizzle of good olive oil and a good pinch of some sea salt and cracked black pepper at the end, just to finish it off. So we're just going to sprinkle ours with the rosemary. And then we want a good grating of parmesan over the top. And finally it's on with the last bit of the extra virgin olive oil. And the final bit before you can eat your focaccia is to pop it into an oven that's 210 degrees Celsius or gas mark 6 I believe, or if your oven is a fan oven you want it 10 degrees cooler, so 200 degrees Celsius, for around 15 to 20 minutes until it's golden brown on the top and on the bottom. You check this by lifting it out and checking on the bottom. If it needs a little bit more, just pop it back in for a couple of minutes and then it's all ready to eat. So our focaccia's been in the oven about 20 minutes and it's time to check whether it's ready. So as you can see, it's a beautiful golden colour underneath and on the top. And now all we need to do is eat it.